Live in Milton Keynes, David Cameron has been setting out why the government needs to take some tough action to tackle the deficit. He's now answering some questions on the subject, so let's listen in.
I think people understand we need to raise some modest additional revenue from capital gains tax to pay for the increase in tax allowances that we all want to see, to help the low paid, to help protect, as I said, the people that we want to help most at this time. And I think people also understand, and actually if you read any of the things written by anyone who is concerned about capital gains tax, they all understand this massive leakage of revenue that takes place when you have a very low rate of capital gains tax and a very high rate of income tax. And clearly, it would be irresponsible to allow that massive leakage to take place. We do need to be in a position where we get our deficit down. I think people understand that, but they know that there'll be an answer in the budget, and I hope that will be an answer that people will find. It shows that we've addressed the concerns that people understandably have. Nick.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Nick Robinson, BBC News. You say these cuts will affect our whole way of life, that they will affect every individual in the country. And yet you still have not spelt out any area that you're looking for which will be painful to people. When will you start to do that? And when ministers make comparisons with, say, Canada, they blew up a hospital in Canada. They made redundant tens of thousands of people. They cut benefits too. Is that what Britain has to look forward to?
Well, what I would say is this, that we've got a proper process for doing this, a process where we have a budget on the 22nd of June that will set out the spending over the next 3 years. And then I want to see a proper debate take place that involves as many people as possible, that will lead to the actual spending reductions in departments being set out and what the consequences of those spending reductions are. And I want us to go about this in the best way possible, to take people with us. What I would say about Canada, and I was speaking to the Canadian Prime Minister about this just last week, while they do stand as an example of a government, it was a previous government that sorted out a debt and a deficit crisis, the great warning they give is that actually they put it off for too many years before they did it. So the problem they had to solve was even worse by the time they got round to it. I'm determined, seeing the figures as I can now see, understanding the warnings which I've made before but make again today, that we shouldn't put this off. We need to get on with what needs to be done. Yes, we need to take people with us. Yes, it will mean difficult departmental decisions. And yes, it will inevitably mean some difficult decisions over big areas of spending, like pay and pensions and benefits. And we need to explain those to people. But I profoundly believe that government is about acting in the national interest. It is our national interest to do this, and it's in our national interest to try and take the country with us as we do it. But ducking the decisions would be a complete betrayal of what I believe in, which is government, public interest, national interest, doing the right thing. If this is the right thing to do, we must be able to convince people that it's the right thing to do. And irrespective of how unpopular some of these decisions will be, we will, I think, in the long run, be able to take people through us to a brighter economic future beyond.
Just briefly, you're saying people will get a sense of what this might involve come the autumn, the spending round, or within weeks?
There will be difficult decisions in the budget, undoubtedly. There will be then discussions over the summer about public spending and public spending changes that are going to have to be made in different departments. And as I say, these will be relatively open discussions, because once you start setting a spending envelope for the next 3 years, something the last government didn't do. I mean, they went into the election not setting out any spending totals for the next 3 years. Once you do that, people will see the sorts of choices that we, with them, will have to make. Perhaps Danny would like to say something about it a week into looking at some of those difficult choices.
Yeah, thank you, Prime Minister. I mean, I've spent the last week looking over the books, and obviously announcements will be made in the budget and then in due course in the spending review, but I'm in no doubt at all, having done that, that the approach we're setting out today is exactly the right thing to do, because, you know, there has been irresponsibility in the way that the previous government handled the public finances, and we have to bring responsibility to the way that we do that. That's the point of this agenda. And in a sense, what we're setting out today is, you know, if we don't take responsibility in the way that the Prime Minister has set out, what are the consequences of that? The £70 billion that we'd end up spending on debt repayments, for example, the consequence that has for money that you can't spend on public services. That's why when you look at all the other options, no matter how painful what we have to do might be, we have to do it.
Don't put off what needs to be done is the thing to bear in mind. Lady here and then behind.
Thank you. Rachel Younger, Sky News. I'm interested that you say you want to engage and involve the whole country in this very painful cutting process that has to happen. It sounds good. It also sounds like it might be little more than a talking shop. How are you going to convince people that you'll not only listen to them, but that you'll also act on what they want and don't want to happen?
Well, that's, to me, what politics should be about. I mean, we, the politicians, have got a duty, I think, to explain to the country the nature and scale of the problem. I've tried to do that today. I've tried to explain what happens if we don't do anything. If we just sat back, took the easy course, enjoyed being in office and making decisions and having meetings, just sat there, what would happen? And actually, the consequences would be very dire. So we've set out the envelope, as it were, of what needs to be done. Then I think there needs to be a discussion following the budget about, well, what are the priorities? What are the things we need to protect most of all? What are the difficult decisions that we could take? And to involve people, not some... I don't want to spend a lot of money doing this. There isn't any money, as one of your predecessors put it so clearly. But I think it is a good idea to take people with you, have this discussion and debate about education spending, about whether we're spending on transport, infrastructure, how much you try and protect capital spending, all those. Have a discussion with people. And then at the end, obviously, we have the spending review where you have to make your announcements. Inevitably, we are going to make a lot of decisions that people won't agree with. But we have to convince people first that the big decision, the need to reduce spending and get the deficit under control, is the right one. And I think once you've done that, then people, even if they don't accept some of the individual decisions, because all these choices are hard choices, we can take people with us on the basis that the alternative, the doing nothing, the sitting back, the pretending somehow this is all going to be cured by growth, that would be incomparably worse. That's what we have to try and do. Laura. Oh, sorry, yes, gentleman there, and then Laura Kunsberg.
Mr. Prime Minister, Elliot Gotkin from Bloomberg Television. Is there a danger in this globalised world that by talking about things being far worse than you expected, that you perhaps could be seen to be talking down the British economy, which could be taken unfavourably by the markets? And also, you talk about uniting the country. Isn't there a danger that you'll succeed in doing that, but you'll not unite the country against you and your government?
Let me take both of those. I think there would be a danger in what you say if we hadn't, as a government, already taken action. We're not just arriving in government and saying, oh, look, this is all, terrible. We've arrived in government and immediately had a mini spending round and reduced spending by £6 billion in year. So we've sent a very strong signal about that this is a government that recognises the problem, but also wants to take action to deal with the problem. And I think what I've set out today is a very calm and clear analysis of how bad the problem is and what the consequences are of not taking action. But I think people can judge us by what we have already done, and they'll obviously judge us on the budget that we announce, the spending figures we announce, the plans for the rest of the Parliament. And that, I think, is what people will rightly want to hear. Is there a danger we could unite people against us? Look, this is fraught with danger. This is a very, very difficult thing we are trying to do. I went to address all the peers in the House of Lords before the election. I remember looking around the room and there were all these great figures from the past of Geoffrey Howe and Nigel Lawson. And, no one in this country has had to deal with an 11% budget deficit before. Why? Because we haven't had one before. This is worse than anything that people have had to deal with before. And so, yes, there are great risks and great difficulties in dealing with it. But to me, the challenge of statesmanship is to take difficult decisions in the national interest because it's the right thing to do. And you have to try and take people with you as you do that. But what is clear to me is an even easier way of uniting the entire country against you would be sitting back and waiting for the realisation to grow that Britain's economy was hopelessly in debt. Debt interest payments were eating up all of the hard-earned taxes that everyone in this room and beyond pays, and that the government was just too weak and feckless to do something about it. We have to act, we have to convince people it's the right thing to do, and then we have to do our best to take them with us on the difficult decisions along that path. That is what this is all about. It's not meant to be easy. It is incredibly difficult. No one's done it before, but we have to do our very best to deal with it, and I believe that we can. And I think the coalition helps us because we have two parties together actually facing up to the British people and saying both of us have come to this judgment that it's the right thing to do, and we're going to carry this through together, and we're going to try and take you with us as we do so. Laura, and that will be the last question.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Laura Kunsberg, BBC News. If the situation is so much worse than you'd previously thought,